Okay, just to thank the Minister in her absence, delighted you could join us actually on some sort of key points there around social inclusion, about some of the cultural activities maybe that we have experienced across Belfast. Sometimes there can be negative experience associated with that, but looking forward to seeing the results of the strategy. Thank again the Minister for doing that. I'd now like to warmly welcome Johanna Reiman, I think I've got that right, who heads up Executive Director of the WHO Collaborating Centre on Healthy Cities in the Baltic cities in Turku and Finland. Johanna has worked with us many years. She's been a close collaborator with Belfast Healthy Cities for many, many years and has been a strong leader within the WHO Healthy Cities network. And I think some of the key part of our rationale actually for holding the links between culture, health, well-being and inequalities was when we go now to our annual conference in Europe, there are a significant number of abstracts and case studies being presented linking to the positive impact of culture and arts on health and well-being. And part of the rationale for this seminar was actually to raise that, we already know that, but it's almost to begin to sort of try to firmly put that in place. So a very warm welcome to Johanna, and we look forward to what you have to say.
Thank you very much. Yeah, good morning, everybody. It's really a great pleasure to be here. We have worked for years with Joan, Caroline and Laura and the Belfast Healthy Cities team, so it's really great to present what we have done in the Nordic countries, and Turku is my hometown, and we are the oldest city in Finland, and we are very proud of our culture. Actually, sometimes there are lots of jokes about people in Turku, how we feel that we are the origin of all Finnish culture. But yeah. So Turku was the European Capital of Culture 2011, and that was actually after a long process of having done many things to combine culture and well-being. But that year was actually a boost to start new things, and after that year we have continued a lot issues where we combine culture and well-being. So that was really the kick for the issue. Well, of course, what is culture? In the photo is a Finnish pastry called pulla, and we have foreign co-workers in the association, and they are actually saying often that how can Finland have for each term of the year so many pastries? We just had the Runeberg Day and so on. So in a way, of course, agriculture, horticulture, cooking, all these things are part of culture. Dancing belongs to culture of many countries. Singing in choirs. We have statistics that Swedish-speaking Finns, who are a minority, 5% of Finns have Swedish as a mother tongue, they often sing in choirs, and that's good for their health. So community actions like this are really promoting our health. Reading books. You don't always have to leave your home to be able to do culture. I just finished Jan Kross' book, an Estonian author's book, in the airplane coming that. It only needs a book and me, and I have a wonderful cultural experience. Libraries in Finland are really cultural centers. Anybody can go to a library free of charge. We have a large network of libraries, so in a way culture can be just between a book and yourself, and experience is really great. Handicrafts, of course, it's an issue where, for example, the immigrant population and the original population of the cities can have things in common. We can learn many new handicraft issues from people whose cultural origin is different from our own. So things like these. Sauna belongs to Finnish culture. Call a Finnish family on Friday or Saturday evening, they are all in sauna. My father, who loves classical music and sometimes wonders why people think that people talk about understanding classical music. He feels that it's not about understanding anything, it's about enjoying, and it's the same with sauna. You don't have to understand what sauna is, you just have to enjoy it. So, of course, there is also quite a lot of discussion about that. Do culture and arts have a value of their own? of course they do have a value of their own, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't use art and culture for community actions. So it's actually not just the value of its own or using it, so you can do both. Artists actually may have to learn how to deal with community actions and how to deal with people who work for social and welfare organizations, but you can learn it. Not all artists want to do that, but many do, and those who do find it really, really, really interesting. Why then to combine culture and health? So of course there are groups, middle-aged people who can with their own money go to cinema, go to theater, go to opera, buy new books and so on, but there are many people who cannot do that. So in a way we strongly recommend cities to put an effort of those people who wouldn't with their own money or from their own background do cultural things. So cities should really focus on organizing cultural activities to those groups of people, children, immigrants, elderly people in elderly care centers who never leave their bed. So also these people have to be offered cultural experiences. For example, there was a musical made of young people and some professional artists in Turku 2 years ago. And what did the city planner of children's culture, Leena Hiltunen, do? She reserved a large group of the tickets to childcare centers so that children who wouldn't otherwise be, like their parents wouldn't take them to musicals, Leena made sure that these children also and young people also could see the wonderful musical, which was actually the theme was about how do you grow adult and how do you choose your profession, how do you choose your interests in life. It was a really touching cultural experience musical which was shown to paying customers and to customers who were not paying themselves. And this is of course, I mean, we flew here from Finland and the person who sat next to us in the airplane, his air tickets might have been either cheaper or more expensive. We don't have to know. Also in an audience, in a cultural happening, there can be people who pay with it with their own money or people who don't pay it with their own money. And for example, City of Turku has a that if they have extra tickets, if they have free tickets for some cultural activities, they can send a text message to people who are getting social support. And these people realize that, okay, there might be some tickets in the theater, I press yes, I'm coming, and then they have access to the cultural exercise. This is great. I mean, there are always empty places in theaters and in concerts. Why not give the opportunity to those people who otherwise wouldn't by themselves discover that, okay, that's something I want to do. Culture can be offered everywhere. This is an example from our river base where a poet, you were walking on the street and the poet was there for you. He wrote a poem, he asked a few questions about you, you could sit down, he wrote a poem and read it to you. I mean, it was really pleasant experience. You passed by, somebody stopped you and gave you quite a lot of thought for the rest of the day. So it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be like a half a year training period. You can do small things like that with very easy planning, just giving the opportunity and organizing things like this to be done. City life, of course, has a lot of opportunities for cultural experiences. People collect in cities because cities have jobs, because cities can give you experiences. This is how it looked like in Turku not 5 weeks ago. So in a way, you cannot do that kind of, how do you call that, that you are searching places, that you are searching, what is that called, that you are,
Hide and seek?
Yeah, exactly, hide and seek things. You cannot do that when it's snow like this, but anyway, otherwise, city life is really it offers you possibilities to cultural experiences. How then to work with different professionals? You have to really have the will to trust that the other person whose training, whose background, whose capabilities are different to your own. You have to really try to cross the boundaries and to share the target. And if the target is the well-being of the city residents, of course, then you have a lot to gain if you put into the same table people whose backgrounds are different. You have to be able to identify the benefits, and somebody has to be the enthusiastic person to suggest new things for workplaces, for example. And this example, which we don't see very well, but it's an old person lying in her bed and an artist is singing to her. There have been experiences in Finland that people are lying in their bed for years, and what can they see? They can see a ceiling, white ceiling for years. Why couldn't you have a competition, drawing competition for children, and put the drawings to the ceiling of the elderly center? It may be that the cleaning ladies don't like that, but I mean, it doesn't collect a lot of dust that you have flowers on the ceiling for some weeks. You just have to have the clever ideas and energy to realize things like these. So culture can increase capabilities, resources, and self-confidence, as the minister was earlier saying. And art-based methods can also be used in situations which are quite tricky and difficult. Dementia, treatment of dementia in schools, solving workplace crises. Sometimes that you have an outside person. For example, we were planning projects together with a person who is doing a lot of therapy for solving difficult workplace difficulties and crises. She said that when she came to the workplace, people are sometimes via cultural activities raising up issues which they have been quiet for years. So somehow the outside person can help workplaces discuss things which are quite difficult and tricky for themselves to be solved. Then of course this opportunity for empowerment is a really great issue, especially for young people. And this photo is my own. We don't have a sailing boat ourselves, but Turku area has a wonderful archipelago. So this is my daughter who looks really happy, wonderful summer day. But we should aim in cities to have all our young people have that kind of feeling among themselves, that they have the capacities. They can do anything they want. We organized a small workshop in a local school. It was a very multicultural class. It was students of Humanistic University of Applied Sciences. They organized a dream workshop for a group of 14 pupils at the age of 9 and 10. And it was very simple. We had magazines where they could take some photos. They were interviewing each other, and they were doing some computer dream workshops. And it was really wonderful to see how the teacher and these really young students of Humanistic Universities Applied Sciences could make the young pupils dream. Because I was touched deeply by the Swedish Healthy Cities network coordinator Kerstin Månsson, who said that they have kindergartens in south of Sweden where young people don't have any dreams. They don't have any view of their life. And what can be more miserable vision for any nation or city that we don't have young people who look forward to fulfilling their dreams. The dreams were actually quite simple. They wanted to meet a rock star, they wanted to travel to London, they wanted to do things like this, but they were really looking forward to these short sessions where they were planning and telling also each other about their dreams. So where is culture used then? It's a promoter of participation. It can be used for part of social and welfare work and in occupational health. The photo is from a handicrafts thing that the city of Turku reserves a certain area next to the river where for some weeks different organizations can hang handicrafts to the trees, and then you can vote that what do you like the most. And I mean, this is a very simple, cheap way to organize nice things for people in their surroundings. So I think a really nice thing. When we had the 2011 year, there was also workshops for making old-fashioned, like you make carpets with this old-fashioned way of wooden making carpets, and they made kilometers-long carpets and put that into a actually fairly exciting area, an ex-prison in the city, to a place where normally you couldn't go, but there was a carpet and you were stepping on the carpet and discovering your surroundings, and even of course the process of making them had been empowering itself. So culture is good for people and for cities. So people themselves and livability and attractiveness of cities. And circus, of course, there is a lot of social circus in Finland nowadays. The statue is, City of Turku has culture, and the statues don't have to be serious always. We have a group of 4 types of statues, different age people, and my dog got really afraid when the statue suddenly was there, but culture can be also cheerful and perhaps not so serious business always. Culture and health, we had a big Nordic conference end of January in Turku, and this was a Danish expert saying that, expressing what kind of meanings there are in combining culture and health. So she was talking about pedagogic, psychological issues. Sometimes it's criticized that we talk too much about health. That if you ask an old person that what's important in life, it's about meaningfulness more than health. An ill person can be very happy if he or she felt that his life has had meaning. So I think this is a very important aspect, not just absence of illness. Then there is the evidence-based issue, the medical issue. For physical activity, we know how many doses of physical activity we have to do in a week. For culture, we don't know the dose. But in general, there are surveys saying that the more you consume culture, the healthier you feel. So, and Swedes have done a lot of work with music therapy, and the more you give music therapy, the happier the person is. And aesthetic, of course. You have to build aesthetic environments to those suburbs which might not be the wealthiest area of the city. So aesthetic issues are very, very important also. The photo is from a project of City of Turku where they asked people in supermarkets, in childcares and so on. They asked people where they go about what kind of cultural activities would you like in our region of the city. And sometimes Tony Eckers will tell more about that, but sometimes it was surprising. It was the city didn't know what the people wanted, and sometimes what they wanted could be accomplished fairly cheaply. For example, building paths and putting some art into the paths and so on. So it's not necessarily the projects had the health issue there. So that's why Turku chose the theme "Culture Does Good." So there were really lots of very exciting projects, and the aim was to create new possibilities for people to find activities for their leisure time, individual ways to enjoy culture. This photo is from an elderly care center where there was a French artist who came to draw people and she spent actually quite a long time living with the old people and listening to their life stories, and next photo is about that actually, and then drawing the people and discussing with them, and then that ended up being a cultural statue outside the elderly care center. The same entity had a project called Kuva, which means picture in Finnish, and it's a shortening of culture to life of elderly people. And it was a really successful project, surprisingly successful project, because the elderly center invited artists to take part in everyday work of the unit, and the artists had questions which the nurses hadn't thought of. For example, the artists were asking that what new things would your patients like to learn? And the nurses hadn't thought that their old people would like to learn anything. They were thinking that they are in the last years of their life, but of course they might want to learn something new. And the head nurse, Tuulia Koponen, who was leading this project, said that although nursing professionals, their main duty is to have the individual as the core of a care, but she said that somehow they had forgotten it over the years, and with the fairly hard work of working with the old people, that she said that the artists opened their eyes of seeing individual people, individual persons among their customers. So it's a project which is continuing, and it means that in the care plans there is now included individual care plans, there is culture included. It can be that this Swedish-speaking old woman finds knowing what happens in the world very important, and that somebody spends 10 minutes in a day reading newspaper articles to her. It can be simple things like that. Somebody hates tango music, somebody loves waltzes. It can be something fairly small, but these small things can mean a lot to the old people, give a lot of meaningfulness for their life. City of Turku has chosen this kind of vision and mission. 2029 comes from the fact that Turku city will be 800 years then, so that's the reason for the funny year for the vision. But that Turku is a city where culture is an inseparable part of the inhabitants' life and a reason to visit our city. And active lifestyle for all is the mission, and that culture creates sustainable social capital for everyone in a changing time. And I think this changing time is really key issue. Our societies are changing so quickly now that what we planned some years ago, we may have to rethink those issues, because it's really... I listened to our president in the 80s. He gave a speech at the University of Helsinki. He was a very big man with very big hands. He was a previous harbor worker, and his theme was that our societies are changing in more and more rapid way, and that's exactly what I think we all in our years have realized. So effects of culture, I continue with this theme. Improve self-comprehension. It's kind of transformative strength to cope with your everyday lives. I mean, we all have difficult times in life, and culture can help us cope our everyday life. Also, of course, knowledge can be increased. So in a way, you could say that culture is invisible social politics. Theater about bullying, this was a theme in Turku 2 years ago. All school children at certain age went to see a theater play about bullying. You can raise difficult issues and show them by means of culture. The photo is from a medieval festival organized in our city every June, and it's a wonderful happening because you are always in the right place. 4 days of culture and arts and a lot of activities. Usually if something is happening, a cultural happening somewhere, you always feel that, okay, 2 o'clock, I should be there and I don't have time. When you are in medieval market in Turku, you are always on the right place, because there are volunteers who are trained to be medieval people, there are shows and plays and small plays happening all the time. It's a wonderful experience. You really feel always that you are in the right place. It's nice to see, sometimes it's quite cruel. They are hanging people and they are doing all the cruel medieval things, but which is perhaps not good for your health. But anyway, it's a wonderful example of culture in city life. Human need, culture is human need. And it improves your ability to work. It gives you a sense of community feeling, and it revitalizes your senses. This photo is from a path, several kilometers long path, and it's an industrial area. It's actually quite rusty, this cultural statue, but there are lights on it, and it's wonderful. I often walk there, and the different colors of light, I'm always guessing that when I get there, are the lights on? And very cheap, nice piece of art, which gives joy to hundreds of people every day by showing lights and being a rusty piece of art there. Turku also had a musical 2011. A group of ordinary people were collected together to train for a musical. So here, of course, I'm a bit too young, if possible, for Hair, which was launched in 1967. And to many of the people who were part of the process, Hair was their youth experience. They remember the day when they learned about Hair. The middle-aged people were collected and started to train for the musical. They really loved the process. They felt that, first of all, their physical condition was recorded, so their weight and their blood pressure and so on, and after the process, of course, it was followed. And many of the people lost weight. Many of them had serious issues in their life. For example, I know a teacher of Finnish language. She had lost her husband in an accident, in a car accident, and she and two other women felt, who had lost their husbands suddenly, they felt that it was a really empowering exercise to learn to know new people, to practice dancing and singing together, and it really helped you heal in your difficult life situation. You had sense of community. You had an artistic goal. You knew that there was a deadline. You knew that there were performances. Tickets were sold. You knew that you had to accomplish learning the steps and so on. It was a big show to be expected. The group became they became friends. They continued and have continued after the process. So it really was not just practicing for one show. It was practicing for enjoying life more, coping with difficulties. Life full of experiences. One thing they left out from the here in 1967, they left the drugs out, but otherwise they kept the feeling of peace and so on. So really nice experience. I was sitting with 8 friends on the first row, and I must say that it was perhaps not the nicest cultural experience I have had, but we were laughing all the time because you could see that these people really enjoyed it. There were 7 performances, it was sold out, a big audience, a wonderful experience. You could really, you were happy 2 weeks afterwards, even having sat in the audience. I hope that somebody would do this for Saturday Night Fever, so I would participate immediately. So, the reasons for the positive effects, this is how this teacher of Finnish language describes that she felt that because it was target-oriented, it was not just that gymnastics for the sake of gymnastics, it was dancing for a purpose, to perform. You really learned new skills. You became creative. Many of the people had profession. They were carpenters. There were like people who had no training whatsoever anywhere time of their life in any cultural activity. So it was a really mixed group of people. The atmosphere was crazy and understanding. And you could choose. You could choose that you were in one of the most important roles or in the back row role. So in a way, you didn't have to learn the steps perfectly, perhaps, if you were in the back row. There were still professionals who had their responsibility was to secure that it became a show. So in a way, you just were doing what you were told and practicing what you were told, but somebody else, a professional artist, had the responsibility. And there was the nostalgia issue. You could remember, when did I see hair in my youth, and so on. And there was a lot of media interest, so there was a lot of hype in this process, and yeah, it was really a great process. So why should cities invest in culture? Cultural activities can give new ideas to all sectors of the city. And of course there are new residents in the city, so they might need other types of issues. They might need to get to know the city via means of culture. You can get new insights to your work. You can get variability to your working life. If an elderly care center chooses to spend half an hour listening to music, old-fashioned music, it means that half an hour, it may well be that, for example, old people who have dementia, they may remember words of songs, and then they may be on better mood for the rest of the day, so that even the work for the nurses becomes easier for the rest of the day. So it's not just out of the minutes of the day, but it can also give relief to the rest of the hours of the day. People want new services. We have a library card, and to the library card there are cultural experiences attached. So you might get text messages or emails saying that, do you want to bring on Valentine's Day a friend to a museum? Our Museum of Modern Art organized, actually, and I don't know how it went, but they organized yesterday blind dating in a museum due to Valentine's Day. I think it's the first time they did it. I think that was really exciting. Between 6 and 8, you could have a blind date in a museum due to Valentine's Day. So new nice things. People want these new experiences, new services. And cities could include culture and health in their cross-sectoral teams. I mean, cross-sectoral issues belongs to the healthy cities from its very beginning, but make sure that your social and welfare groups also have cultural people. You should also set specific goals and specific budgets. You should plan cultural and well-being activities to those issues where you haven't earlier planned. You should remember that you evaluate what you are doing, that you plan, that you also plan how to follow, how did it go. And sometimes cities do a lot of nice services, but they forget to market. And marketing is as important as planning for new services, because if nobody knows that you had new things, I mean, why to develop them at all? So marketing is possible via social media, so marketing is really very important. We have also, in very many Finnish cities, cultural friends activities, which means that a person can get a cultural friend to theater or museum, and then that friend gets free access to these cultural places. So it may be that a person who hasn't been to an art museum for 20 years, that she may feel that how do I do that, or how do I go to a theater? By the way, theaters should also have free places to hang your coat, because many of the cultural activities you have to pay something. Even if you get your tickets free, you have to be able to allow, 2 euros can be a big money to some person, that you have to be sure that you don't have to pay for everything when you go there. But cultural friends it's an easy way of, first of all, giving a person, for example, freshly retired citizen who might have had quite a lot of work in their daily activities and suddenly has all the hours of the day to do we have very good experiences that these people are cultural friends to children or elderly people, and they follow them to cultural activities and also can enjoy themselves then these cultural issues. Classical concerts of our Philharmonic Orchestra, you can listen via web and so on. Many things you can open to public, you don't have to be present yourself. One fairly exciting Finnish social invention in culture is Restaurant Day. And I was very critical in the beginning because my background is a very early background when I have come to Belfast actually 27 years ago. That was a food hygiene issue. I was in food hygiene visiting North Ireland Poultry Industry Conference, but I was very critical when they started restaurant days. Restaurant day means that you are opening your home or cooking on the street. This is my oldest daughter Maria, who is a scout. They are showing, I mean, Scouts is a wonderful activity where hardly any money is used, but they were showing of course this was marketing for Scouts, but anybody can open a restaurant for one day and serve food. And our food safety authority is quite relaxed about that, because the person who cooks, of course she or he has to be sure that nobody gets food poisoning. But people love this activity. Restaurant Day is open in very many Finnish cities. One year there were so many mushrooms in the autumn that the main menu was mushroom soup and so on. But anybody can start a restaurant for one day. And this happens several times in a year. The webpage is quite nice. They show photos and films about how it can be done. But this is an invention how city can open, people can open their gardens, their kitchens, their living rooms, part of a street to anybody, and even sell food with very cheap price. And it's a really great community action. People love the Restaurant Day. Next one is next week, 21st of February. So I recommend, if Belfast nobody has done Restaurant Day in Belfast, start it in your own kitchen. You might have a secret wonderful recipe of kidney pie or whatever. Thank you very much.